What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. As you notice today, we have no guest. It's just me and Gino. And that's simply because we have one topic today, but it's a very confusing, long, crazy topic.
It's like get on your bike and ride.
yeah. If you're on a long drive, please watch this episode. I don't know how long this episode's going to be, but after I was done writing the guide, it was about 7 pages.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a doozy.
I mean, yeah, you went into like the whole history and timeline thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important for the context of what's going on right now, because some people are thrown into the timeline right now, like boom, this is just what happened without knowing prior context of how we got here.
How we got here and what's to come, because it's not just like everything's cool now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little nooks and crannies and different things that are going on. I was just listening to Miggy's partner.
Oh, cannabis, Tom.
Yeah, cannabis legalization. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching earlier, and he brought up really good points and everything.
Yeah, he went into the whole reason why, the little statutes that they used, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that later on.
But without us giving any context, we haven't given them yet. This is about cannabis rescheduling. So I was like, wait, we haven't even told them what it's about. It's about cannabis rescheduling.
They decided to go ahead and change the schedule on everybody and go, surprise!
The day our regular weekly episode aired. So yeah, great for us. Yeah, that's why I always write these the day of, because things could change. And sometimes it happens where right after we're done with an episode, something happens, and I'm like, I gotta cover that next week now. Damn it. Yeah. But that's no big deal. So just to catch you guys up, this episode is going to be about cannabis rescheduling. Last week, after our episode aired, they rescheduled cannabis the next day, or probably a couple hours before the episode aired, really. They rescheduled cannabis. They went ahead and did it. But the way they went about it was unique. But before we get to any of that, let's back up and we'll start with the history. We're going into the episode right away. We'll start with the history of this, how we got here.
And he's going back a few years.
Yeah, I'm going back about a few years. So it took us almost 4 years to get us to the point where we are right now. So if we go back to October 6, 2002, the show wasn't even a thing yet. I think I had just contacted the radio station to get this started.
Yeah, that was shortly after.
Yeah. It was around that time I had hit them up. And so the show wasn't even going yet when this started. So at the time, President Biden was our president, and he directed HHS, or Human Health and Services, and the Attorney General to review how cannabis is scheduled.
Yeah.
And so what they did with that is they reviewed it and they went about their way. We didn't hear anything for almost a year.
It's a long time.
Yeah, about 10 months.
Towards the end of the administration, I do remember getting into some hearings and other stuff like that.
Yes, and that was like after the nitty gritty. So about 10 months later, in August of 2023, our first season, we've actually been covering this since season 1. So anytime there was changes going on, if you go back to season 1 of Ask Chad Grassy Logic, you're going to find us talking about rescheduling at some point and updating everybody. So this goes way back then, season 1 and everything. So August of 2023, I know I covered this, is when we finally heard, our first news and stuff that's going on with this process and everything after, Biden did that. So this timeline starts with Biden as president, and it goes into a new administration. So this is how long this took, is it went into a new administration. So August 23, almost a year later, they recommended cannabis move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Yeah. And they did pretty much tell us that, yes, it does have medical benefits. It's less harmful than, these drugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The whole spill, report stuff. Everyone cheered. Everyone's crazy. Stocks went all nuts, and, the news stations went crazy, and a bunch of speculations were running around. So that happened. We didn't hear anything again for months. So in 2024, finally, we got a hearing. We got a hearing scheduled. We never really got the hearing itself like we thought it was going to be. We got like some preliminary stuff and everything, but we didn't get the actual hearing.
Yeah.
The hearing was stopped pretty much because it was an election year. And the presiding judges on it, or the presiding judge on it, decided to halt it. And, they pretty much said that this is going to be halted indefinitely.
Yeah.
So we thought the scheduling was dead, and we're going to have to wait till the next administration, or if there is one. At the time we didn't know who it was going to be, to see if what's going to happen.
Also I think there's a big fear that as the administration changes and you get other people elected with the Congress and all that other stuff, that you're going to get more of a pushback on anything. And there were a lot of people very negative saying it's pretty much dead.
Yeah.
At that time, and I think that's what a lot of people were thinking.
Yeah, even myself, I kind of felt like it was dead, but at the same time, it still had a chance. We just didn't know what the hell was going on because we still to this day aren't really sure exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They tell us things, but at the same time, like, well, why? Like, it was so random. Like it was so sudden that they just, we're not going to do this, and we're like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, I know it's an election year, but come on. and that happens on the state level too.
Yeah.
We're actually in the last leg of our current governor's tenure in office, and we're going to have an election this year to pick our new governor. So right now there's things that aren't happening, some things that they're trying to do at the last minute. The legislature already happened. They'll have to do an emergency, session for it to happen. And to be honest, I don't see that happening for most things in the state right now. Yeah.
Not in an election year.
Yeah.
She's not going to pull that one right now.
And that's going to affect votes if you do.
It will. It will. And I know the primaries are in June.
Mhm.
So we'll get the primaries and the candidates, and the official election is going to be in November. And then we will move on to the next session because it's just a couple of months after that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And
so you're going to be a busy guy.
It's going to be very busy because this is a new administration. Since this show started, we've never had a new administration. We've had, a continuation of an old administration that, because in New Mexico, if you guys don't know, we have a limit on governors. It's the same as presidents. You get 2 4-year terms.
Mm-hmm.
And we are on the last term of the current governor. The last governor that we had, she was there for 8 years too. So it's been,
which includes all of your advocacy and actually getting, recreational.
Yeah. But the bulk of my advocacy that, where we got a lot done was within that time period of the Martinez administration. And that was hell. She hated cannabis, did everything she could to derail the medical program, kept it stagnant for that 8 years. And so once MLG came in, just things night and day changed. We finally got the ball rolling, and boom. And that was probably the best thing that happened. Don't get me wrong. She made a promise to open the licenses the first 90 days of being in office, and she never did that. The licensing didn't open until we legalized it.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of figured that was going to be the case. Governors and politicians always tell you, I'm going to do this. And they figure out, I can't do that.
Yeah. I was going to say politics and our favorite word, which I will not say yet. But trust me, it'll be coming a lot.
Oh, it's going to. Oh, yeah. We're going to be hearing that word a lot.
It's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
I still think we need some T-shirts right there along with your planties. So,
I like that. We could do a couple. Some merch stuff. We got to get some merch going.
Yeah.
So 2024 is the last time we heard something. It halted, right? So we had the election. Trump ended up winning. January came. We didn't really hear much about cannabis. We got some teasers here and there, but nothing really happened about the first year he was in office until recently. Now we got the executive order back in December, and then we also got a psychedelics executive order kind of recently.
Yeah.
Now those, as always, I tell you guys, do not have any kind of legal backing. It doesn't create a law. It doesn't change the law. It's a suggestion. And it's a heavy suggestion. It's the same thing that Biden did, when he instructed, HHS and the Attorney General. It's the same thing that he did. He instructed them, but it was more of a suggestion, like, hey, I want you guys to do this and this and this, and they obliged.
One of the things that I looked at when you said that we were going to be talking about this subject today, of course, doing some more research on it. And if we're completely honest, I mean, technically speaking, the whole scheduling idea is not a law. It is a rule. It's a policy.
Yeah.
And it's a policy that the DEA and the Attorney General both have that idea of making up. So nothing is really set in stone at all at the whim. I won't say at the whim for the most part, because they do have some things and some things they have to go through. However, it is basically just a rule.
Yeah.
And rule changes kind of happen, but they have a way of getting those things in there. So it's not like in the Constitution it says don't smoke weed.
Yeah. The Constitution doesn't say any of that. Yeah.
No.
If anything, it's injected in within something that is added with the rules, and you get in that.
We'll get to that one that is in there.
Yeah, definitely. So the other day, last week, they rescheduled it. So finally, it took over 3 years to get this done. 2 administrations and a whole lot of pushing. From Biden, from Trump, who actually pushed them a couple times on the matter. Then they finally obliged and said, okay, cool, we are going to reschedule it. Because HHS years ago, came to the conclusion that, it does have medical properties. So, there was just a lot of feet dragging going on with it,
Well, there's a lot of that stigma still that's out there, a lot of the pushback.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that there's nothing good that comes of it, especially when you have, was it 42 states that have some sort of medical program?
Yeah.
Half of those have recreational. if you look at the referendum in Texas asking, hey, should we do something about cannabis? And they went, yes,
Yeah, we want
with
this.
a big majority.
Yeah, it was like 90% or 80%, something
I think
crazy.
they did the same in Florida a few years ago and a
Yeah.
few other places where there's a lot of people that say, yeah, this should be done. But once again, with that, how much time are we in? Anyway, but once again, the politics of
Yeah.
it all gets in the way,
Yeah.
and like you said, dragging feet, and it just takes longer than it ever should have.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so now that we caught you guys up, we got the timeline going, and of course we can go before that even with the CSA. But we all know, hopefully at this
Not
point
gonna
what
go
the
on that.
the Controlled Substances Act is, and how that all happened back in the day. So we're now on track. Cannabis is rescheduled right now as I'm sitting here. I have a medical cannabis card, and technically my medical cannabis is now a legal thing in the United States.
Yes, but what exactly does that mean?
Exactly. Thank you for asking me,
I was
Gino.
just I saw this. I saw the outline. So what does that mean for everybody that it's rescheduled? And in particular, I think the language is medical cannabis.
Thank you. It's actually medical marijuana is the term that they use. Yeah, they're going with medical marijuana. I did notice in the memos that I was reading in the documentation, it was mentioned as medical cannabis a few times. So I think interchangeably it's going to be medical cannabis, medical marijuana, but I think officially it's medical marijuana.
Okay.
It will be the official designation of it. Here in New Mexico, it is medical cannabis. Our laws don't state it as medical marijuana. Even our recreational laws, it is cannabis because if you guys don't know, marijuana is actually pretty derogatory. It was based out of racism.
Is that a slur?
It's more of a slur, yeah. So a lot of places haven't caught on. Some states still have a medical marijuana program.
I can't believe they could be so racist like that.
I know, isn't that so crazy? Against our own people.
Against a plant.
Right. So here in New Mexico, we decided to use the scientific name, which is cannabis. Marijuana is actually a slang term that came from the El Paso, Juarez area during the very beginnings of cannabis prohibition era.
Yeah.
It came from a time where they were trying to demonize it, and that was a slang term that they were using, and so they used it and ran with it. And
they did a pretty good job.
They did, and even to this day, it's used not as negatively, but it still has that negative history behind it. And here in New Mexico, we just don't use it. For one, it just sounds more ignorant when you say marijuana versus cannabis, because it's not marijuana, it's cannabis.
Yeah. One of the first things I learned with working with Chad is that it is cannabis, not marijuana, not any of the other slang terms that everybody likes to use. Although I still like the podcast. I like that one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'll say reefer, all that stuff, joking around. But for the most part, I try to remain it with cannabis, and it confuses people when you have too many terms for it. There's so many slang terms for cannabis in the past that like people kind of get, like devil's lettuce, this and that, and everyone knows that one. Yeah. But it's better to just stick with one term so everybody knows. Scientific term, cannabis.
Exactly.
It's a little bit easier to say than people trying to say marijuana. Or fucking that up. Or marijuana. And get too crazy into it. So, and one thing that a lot of people don't know, I think federally, officially, it's with the H, not a J.
Really?
Like on the actual law books, yeah, like it's actually an H, not a J, which is odd.
That's even more racist.
Right.
I'm sorry, didn't mean that. I'm just kidding with everybody. But anyway, so what does this all mean with Schedule 3?
Yeah, so let's get into it. So like I said, the announcements from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, we all know what that means. So what got rescheduled? Medical marijuana got rescheduled. And it goes even deeper than that. It's not just medical marijuana. What they did is they saw that there's so many states that have medical cannabis programs. Like I'm getting stuck saying that now. Thanks for the first chat. Was it Hobbit's? Oh no, sorry, NC Crawler 42. Hobbit's Leaf. I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's my son.
Oh,
I sent everybody in my group chat. Said, hey, we're live now on Twitch. If you want to check it out.
Cool. Well, appreciate that. Well, welcome.
So that's Nightcrawler.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's medical marijuana and FDA approved medical marijuana that is legal now. Why the two different things? Because they separated it even further. How I've been telling you guys for years, they separated a cannabis plant when they made hemp by the 0.3% designation of THC. Mm-hmm. They're going to do it again with medical, which they did. And now we have state recreational, and it's like 3 different industries for one damn plant. And now even within the medical framework, oh, that's hilarious. I didn't know that. I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy, so that's funny. Yeah. I guess I'm not a real nerd, but that's funny. That's good. Hobbit sleeve.
Yeah, Hobbit sleeve is what they call weed.
That's funny.
Is that what Bilbo was smoking at the beginning?
I think they confirmed it.
Oh,
I saw a little short on that a little while ago. I think they kind of confirmed that. Yeah,
that explains all the weird things that they. Oh no, that's that's.
I think they really had them smoke weed and do that part of the scene, is what it is. Yeah, it makes fucking sense.
I don't know.
Anyway, so they separated it further even more down to medical. So medical, you have this OR designation when they're talking about federal FDA approved cannabis and state legal licensed cannabis. Both are Schedule 3 and legal now.
Okay.
There's a huge difference though, and I'm gonna get into that nitty gritty as well. But we're gonna get onto some of the language and stuff because I want you guys to understand what's going on. Now, this isn't legal advice or anything. This is just what Gino and I have read, our understanding of talking to people.
We are not lawyers.
Yeah, we are not lawyers. I'm just a guy who can read and did analytical work for the government.
And I know the guy that pushes buttons.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, FDA approved cannabis, state licensed legal medical marijuana or cannabis is Schedule 3. All right, keep those two things in mind. And the word "or," it doesn't say "and." And would be totally different. I know. I tell you guys sometimes when it comes to reading laws and stuff like that, little words make a big difference.
Oh, no,
and the whatever,
especially in
or
politics.
an and. Yeah. Or and are huge when it comes to law and politics and stuff. So here's the exact language from the federal government. I'm gonna read it to y'all verbatim, so that way I'm not, saying the wrong thing or trying to paraphrase or anything. This final rule applies to marijuana as defined in the CSA. Marijuana extracts, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, and other compounds derived from the marijuana plant. Other than the mature stalks and seeds, keep that in mind too, that's very important, we're going to get on that later, that falls outside the definition of hemp. To the extent that any of these are included in the FDA-approved drug products or are subject to a state-issued license to manufacture, distribute, and or dispense marijuana or products containing marijuana for medical purposes. And in there, I put in the notes, notice the "or." And I wanted you guys to pay attention to that because that's huge, because that does designate both separately. And later on in here, we're going to get to what that means separately and what you can do in this and that, because from my understanding anyway, and from the people I've talked to, this is kind of the way that it's, it seems like it's going to be framed. And keep in mind, there is going to be a hearing, I believe, June 29th in Virginia. You can go physically. I don't know if you can talk remotely. I think you can view it or watch remotely, but I don't think you can join in remotely and with the conversation. But the hearing is going to be then. They're going to be expanding this further. They're doing this in steps. They said they're going to do this in 3 steps. And what that tells you is the government doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And this is where the fuckery starts. You
said it before I did it.
Yeah. I mean, I had to. So this is where the fuckery starts.
Then let the fuckery begin, because it is, like you said, they're doing it in steps. They're not sure what they're doing right here. Just that one part that you talked about, and or, with it or in there, it's just got me thinking, is this like, are you going to have to get your medical from the state, or are you going to have to choose to get it from the state or from the federal government?
Either or,
exactly.
Depending on situation
and how is the government going to be handling that or distributing that? I think the or is in there to help out the states that already have a very good medical cannabis.
Yes, and that's framed in here too. And we'll get into that, the nitty gritty of that too as well, because I do want to explain that, because New Mexico, we had Lori on last week, Sanchez, and she explained to us, our program is so well done that it's essentially just handing them over documentation whenever they want it.
Yeah, that was another part that I was checking out before, that they want records of everything and track everything. We got it down.
Yeah. They have my records from 2013 when I first joined the medical cannabis program to today. And if I go to the dispensary after the show and pick something out, they're going to have it today too.
There's one across the street.
Oh yeah, that's true. I can just go
across the street.
Yeah, over there, and just down the street over there. So that's the exact language of it. And keep in mind that "or" thing. I'm going to keep throwing it out there because I want you guys to be conditioned on this "or" thing, because this is huge. Okay, so now we're going to get into your pathways of what you can do. So there's essentially 3 technically that you can kind of do. There's really 2, and that comes from the "or" clause thing. So you have, let's say I'm an operator right now, right?
Yeah.
And I have a dispensary, and I'm under state legal New Mexico law, and I figure this out. I'm like, oh shoot, that's cool. However, I am not forced to sign up with the FDA because of the word "or." I can, if I want to sell and dispense FDA approved medical marijuana. However, that has to be FDA approved medical marijuana, not state legal medical marijuana. So what they did is they realized how many states have a medical marijuana program, and they said it would make more sense for us to allow these states almost like grandfather clause in to the Schedule 3 versus us trying to recreate the wheel and try to figure this out that way and create this huge mess. Don't get me wrong, this is going to create a huge mess either way.
Oh, it's going to get all fucked up.
Yeah.
I just thinking about that because, and this is a little bit of a tangent when we get to the border checks and everything else like that. But
that's a doozy too. I looked that one up as well.
If it's a state issued kind of thing, and you have a state issued, because there's no difference in the product that is for a medical patient and a recreational patient.
Right.
So
other than edibles, but it's a little tiny. It's like a little nuance thing. Yeah.
You get the big ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're little ones, but they're big ones. But there's no difference in the way that they sell that.
Yeah.
So does that mean that technically anything that a dispensary sells could be considered a medically approved? It's just who's purchasing it?
So in New Mexico, there are no recreational only dispensaries. And you could technically be a medical only dispensary. It is kind of up to your discretion to tell the rec patients to go away and you're only accepting medical patients.
Yes, don't give me your money.
Yeah. So you could technically do medical only if you want it. Okay. And you can advertise as medical only, and if someone doesn't have a card, you can turn them away if you like. It's your choice. But in the state of New Mexico, it's not separate. We set it up to where you could be a medical dispensary by yourself, and there was one when we first became legal in 2022, and they stayed around for a little bit. Organica, they were around during the medical days.
Yeah.
I would help them out wherever I could. Great people, love them. The Organica family, shout out to y'all. But they remained medical even after adult sales started, which hats off to them. And eventually they did end up going out of business. But we also had the patient numbers dwindling every month. And that's been a trend ever since 2022. And as I'm speaking, the numbers are going down too. However, they're probably going to start to go back up with this being the case because now back in the day, a lot of people got their medical cannabis card to be safe through the state laws, at least. Now they're going to do it to be safe from the federal laws because now you can, once they get all this settled and everything, eventually you should be able to go to the airports, the border checks, and all that stuff. Once everybody figures this out. Right now, we're in a weird area, guys. Don't try to test the waters until people clarify.
Do not be that first person that gets a lesson. I'll put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that opens up a whole other rabbit hole about state lines and everything else.
And then you have to remember DOJ and DHS and these other departments, they're different from each other, and they have different memos and follow different things. And so that's where it gets even crazier. So your pathway is, okay, you have a dispensary, you want to continue selling to the medical cannabis patients, that's pretty much all you do. From the understanding that I got, you don't have to sign up with the FDA if you don't want to. That is your option because your state medical cannabis, so long as they're following the criteria that they've laid out and the memo and everything, there's all kinds of stuff. Pretty much New Mexico does everything that they want anyway. So we're pretty much
cool like that.
Yeah, we can predict things. And so if you're that guy, it appears that you're good. And I've talked to several people. We've clarified that, Now here's the other option. You could be the dispensary who has the FDA license as well on top of your retail one, but they have to be separate, like separate entities almost, like, two different things. Because one, the FDA approved one, that's pharmacy. So you're technically going to have a pharmacy with the pharmacist, and they're going to be dispensing pharmacy grade medical marijuana. It's not going to be flower. They're not allowing for flower to be on the FDA approved side. That doesn't qualify. So the extracts, the stuff like Marinol and stuff like that, they'll probably be pills that are more or less. And Dwayne, he's going to be on, look out for Dwayne, guys. He's going to be on my show here in a couple weeks. He's actually has something in the works he's been working on for a couple years on this, and he actually
this probably helped him out a lot.
Oh man, and I'm so glad that we had him on last year, and we're keeping him on so that way he can give us an update, because I don't know what the whole process is when it comes to the federal government, the FDA. He's going to be able to share it because he's been doing this for a long time trying to get this going, and now this is definitely going to help him out significantly. He's going to get approved like that because now they're expediting a lot of this stuff. Now that it's
just
scheduled
so that they can go ahead and make it and get it done. So watch out for Dwayne. That'll be coming in a couple of weeks.
So watch out for him. Shout out to him. He's a great guy and everything. I love the fact that he's so open. I'm a part of his email blasts and everything, where he shares updates what's going on. So I'm looking up forward to the next one. So you can be the dispensary, have the FDA, but you're probably gonna have to keep them separate. You're not going to be able to sell FDA approved medical marijuana inside of your state legal dispensary. They're kind of two different things, even though you can kind of do both. They're still going to be separate. Like if you really wanted, you could have a building and have them separated by a wall, and one's your pharmacy and one's your dispensary. But to be honest, like, is it worth it for you at that point, or do you want to just distribute outside of the state with that license?
Yeah.
And even then, when it comes to that,
what does that mean for growers, though, as far as being able to sell to the government?
Okay, so this is where
I jumped ahead a little bit.
A little, but we're pretty much done with the licensing part. There's like a third one where you can just be the FDA approved one, and to be honest, that appears, I'm not sure, it's not confirmed yet. Just from what I'm reading, it appears you can skip the state licensing altogether and just be FDA approved. However, you're not going to have the storefront. You're not going to be able to sell to all the patients and everything. You're only going to be able to sell to the government and export to other countries and other states and stuff that want it. So it's kind of dependent on what you want to do. Do you want to be FDA and just follow all these regulations and rules and just focus on this, or do you want to be Schedule 3 but you're still state legal and it's still within the same protections of the FDA one, but you operate differently? And that's where I'll give the government kudos. That where they did at least see this and say, okay, we're not going to make the problem even more worse than it's going to be.
Oh, they're going to do it eventually.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, you're right. But at least with this one thing, just this very one thing, they said states with a authorized medical license cannabis industry, they're okay. And the way that this is going to work, so since you're here in New Mexico, most people have a recreational, dispensary, and they sell to some patients.
Yeah.
Only your patients that you sell to medically are going to be exempt from 280E. So your medical sales are the only thing. So like half of your business will be exempt from the 280E taxes that we all have to pay. Now I've talked about that a billion times on this show.
Well, that was going to be another thing I was going to bring up today. So that's cool. Actually, that's really good.
No, it is. And to be honest, with the amount of patients increasing, that will get better and better for people, and they'll get better and better tax breaks. But for how long? How long are we going to play this game of, medical cannabis is this, and Schedule 1 is this, before we actually go, we need to do something about the Schedule 1 thing. It's getting ridiculous.
And I think that, like you said, they're going to be doing that in those meetings that come along a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I think the final one's supposed to be in November.
I believe so, because we're having it in June, and I believe November is going to be the next one too. Because another thing I wanted to share with you guys too, and I shout out to Tom from Cannabis Legalization News, is where I actually realized that, because I had read it, but I didn't really comprehend it at first.
And I was actually watching his YouTube video about that whole thing too as well. I was just literally like when you walked in.
It's like, what? That. So this is the reason why this is so fast tracked. This is based off of treaties that we have with the rest of the nations. I believe it's the UN. Mm-hmm. It's based off of treaties, and since we have to abide by certain things when it comes to drugs and everything that with the treaties, we can bypass a lot of the procedural shit and do this. And so that's why it was fast tracked so much. And they're having these hearings so that way they can at least figure out where they need to go from here. It's not necessarily, do we need to do this? It's no, we've done it. Now we need some guidance from industry and professionals in the industry. Hopefully they listen to the right people, and it's not, key people, which it usually is when it comes to government.
I think it came down to the different treaties, and I think Tom actually went through the actual clauses and everything else that they go through those treaties.
I'm not going to do that.
Spaces, no. My brain is not really meant for that right there. But
not lawyers.
Not lawyers. However, it was really interesting to see him talk about that, because it basically came down to the attorney generals, or the acting attorney general at this point in time. His choice on what he was going to go, once again changing that rule. But it was very interesting, because he said that they were basically one of the few times that they went ahead and said, yeah, you know what, we'll go ahead and follow the international law, or the international rule about all this.
And what's crazy about that is within that treaty, and well, the treaties, there's several treaties that, there's several. They list them in the documentation. It's on my Instagram if you guys want to check it out. In those treaties, it actually exempts cannabis from being a part of the monopolized market that the government must do, because within those treaties, we said we will monopolize the scheduled substances when we do sell them. So that's why when you do the FDA thing, you have to actually sell your cannabis to the government, and then the government essentially sells it back. And that's due to the treaty.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out from this as well is due to that. And I thought that was very interesting. But what it does do is it also, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool that we're exempt from that because it allows the state legal medical cannabis shops to continue doing what they do.
Yeah.
Because they're not forced to sell to the government like the FDA approved licenses will be. So keep that in mind, guys. If you're looking to get the FDA approval, there's a lot of shit that you're going to have to go through. Not just the $800 fee, which, some of you are like, oh, that's not that bad. I'm like, that's just the start. Like, think about when you guys got your licensing in the state of New Mexico. You didn't just pay the fee to the state and that was it. You're hunky-dory. Think of all the things that you had to pay to get everything in compliance.
All the small little fees.
Yes.
And
the lawyers.
All the legal stuff that you had to do.
Engineers,
all of the buildings and stuff that you had to go ahead and modify in some way to go ahead and get that whole thing out. And I was just thinking, because a lot of those treaties have to do with the international trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we've ever mentioned it or not before, but it just popped in my head. How big is the international trade legally on cannabis?
It's a billion dollar industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know we've talked about Israel before. We've talked about Germany, but I didn't know what it was like in some other places. I knew Canada. Canada technically counts. It is another country.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of the other countries around still, they may have medical programs, but I don't know about legalization. Once again, I'm a newbie. Thanks.
Some of the chat might answer that one.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
Canada, of course, has legal cannabis, throughout the whole nation as well as medical. So does Germany. Germany had nationwide medical cannabis years ago before they did go legal, but their framework of legalization is a little wonky.
Yeah, I think we've had guests on before that they talk about the club.
Yeah, it's a club style.
And we're not talking like club like that. That's all different kind of German.
Yeah.
That one.
I do actually.
I know he does.
Fun time.
Yeah. It's more like country club.
Yeah.
Yeah, type of thing, or kind of a smoking club, or not gentleman's club. That's once again that's a whole other thing. But the club atmosphere, meaning you're a member of this club, and you get to use that. Right?
Kind of like going to the Elks, or going to the VFW. You just have to be a member of the club to go.
My brother's Elks drinking involved would have been a whole lot different if that was the case.
And what I found out in Europe is they're not afraid of allowing cannabis users to also have a beer, and to drink and to use cannabis at the same time. I've noticed that, and here in the States we're deathly afraid of it, except for certain states when it came to hemp. They were all about it, and they didn't give a fuck. And to be honest, no issues really came from that, and that's my thing about it, too. I'll let adults be adults. They're going to do what they do, and we can't sit here and follow people around with a stick and smack them every time they mess up. That would cost
that would be fun, but still.
Yeah, it would be.
See, that's interesting, that the whole thing. But once again, one of the first things that popped in my head when the Schedule 3 came along, because I've been talking about it for years now, that the being able to do the studies, I want to see the statistics on what it means to have legalized cannabis.
Yeah.
And has it made a change in a lot of what is happening with our police departments and everything else? Are they seeing an uptick in crime? Is there more? Is there less? Is it even negligible? Or nobody's noticed anything? Because personally, I haven't noticed anything.
Yeah.
Except for that corner down the road right there. You drive by, and I don't know who's got an apartment there, but woo! Every once in a while, it's like that.
Me too. Every once in a while, I'm like, I didn't know the person living around here. Oh shit, But I know some people hate it, whatever. But my counter argument to the smell thing, and I grew up in a military town, right?
Yeah.
I grew up where there's an Air Force base. If we heard loud jets, smelled jet fuel, or any of that, and complained about it, people would just tell you that's the sound and smell of freedom, right?
Well, live next to a refinery.
Exactly. Same thing with oil. That's the smell of money.
Go down south a little bit.
Exactly. Those are the exact
smell of money.
Exactly. And I was going to make those exact arguments next too. Is if you go to any of those areas of oil or cow stuff, if you complain about those smells, that's the smell of money.
Have you been to Lubbock?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I've driven through the Permian Basin before.
Oh yeah.
And it reeks of oil, and it's a very disgusting smell, to be honest. But when you complain about it, that's the smell of money. That doesn't happen with cannabis though. When they just gets attacked. And we need to start doing that. You're like, oh, I don't like the smell of marijuana. That's the smell of money. I don't know what to tell you guys.
It's green.
It's a $1 billion industry in New Mexico.
Yeah. Which is one of the things I don't think the politicians have realized as much. I don't even think they realize how much money it's actually bringing in for them.
They just like
And
the tax revenue that comes from
that's what I'm saying, just the tax revenue
Yeah.
itself. But we got a mayor who's
Yeah,
who's in the business. So,
that's true. Yeah.
but still, yeah, it's when you get. I'm sorry, I just was laughing when you get a guy that's been around cannabis a lot, complaining about the smell of oil or the smell of cows out there. Then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
he's got some different olfactory senses.
Exactly. And so I think that the mind shift or the mindset we need to shift to is that,
Yeah.
is when people start complaining, it's like, that's the smell of money. That's what you guys tell us with everything else.
Yeah.
Like, don't get mad at me because we're making money and this smells a particular way. I don't like driving through Vado. It smells like shit.
Quite literally.
Yeah, literally smells like shit.
Well, it's interesting. Like I said, that whole idea, but never underestimate the government and their ability to make stupid rules. I mean, even when you talk about construction sites here in town, they have to have that water truck to keep all the dust down because heaven forbid we should get some dust in the desert.
That part always blows my mind. I'm like, dude, we live in a desert. What do you get? Like, what do you guys
There's
want
some
from us?
guy flowing the water. This is a real thing. There's a water truck on construction sites watering down all the land right there so that the dust doesn't get around all over the place as they're building buildings, commercial buildings, homes, stuff like that. And yet, 30 feet away, there's a gust of wind throwing up everything up against your car and all that water back there. So it blows my mind.
And we're lacking of water anyway, so it kind of blows my mind. They give shit to the cannabis industry for wasting water, and then we're just spraying dirt to not.
All odd numbered houses can only water on odd. I don't know what.
Actually, it's my house is even numbers, so I can only do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Now imagine if
Monday or whatever.
Medical cannabis people can only shop on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Yeah, exactly. It gets a little ridiculous. So,
but like I said, we'll let that fuckery come when it comes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna tell you guys real quick from what I got from the documentation and what the government has said. If you're going to go through this process, so if you're going to do the DEA stuff, says you have to submit a federal registration with the DEA, and actually shared all that information today on my socials. So if you guys want to know where that's at, just head to my socials. I have the links there if you want to go. If you do want to do this, to state medical, expedited pathway. So there's a thing on here in parentheses that says state medical marijuana license registration, and I think that's for the dispensary owners now. So what I saw from the portal is it says dispensary. So if they're only doing dispensary owners right now, or the dispensaries, and I think this is what's going with the phases. They'll do production and manufacturing next, or production then manufacturing on the third step. But I think in the next step they're going to open it up to probably the production. And then once they open up production, they'll open it up to manufacturing. They might do both at the same time. Because when I looked at the documentation, they kind of lump production and manufacturing within manufacturing. And it's kind of weird because they'll mention if you're going to manufacture marijuana, you have to tell us where the marijuana is going to be produced. And I'm like, at a farm that's not here? Because we're manufacturing? So
it's not like somebody walks over to the plant and goes, okay.
Yeah.
You're done.
Exactly. So
no, it doesn't work that way.
There's a lot more.
Even I know that.
Yeah, and so some of the language just isn't adding up to the way that things actually work within the states, and that's another
government.
Yeah, right. Government. They don't know what they're doing still, and it's fair. This is the first time we've been in the situation, and they're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah.
And I knew that was going to be the case. I even told you guys, they're more than likely figuring this out as we're going every day. When they update us, they just figured it out. So when they know, we'll know.
Yeah.
So you have 60 days from April 28th to apply. So there is a time limit to apply for this, y'all. And I think they're doing that because they have this slow rollout of other things. So they're going to do the dispensaries, give you a time period, and then do the production time period because you have 60 days from April 28th. So that pretty much brings us closer to the June hearing date.
Yeah.
So that gives them a time to cut it off, figure shit out, and then they figure out here, okay, cool, now we're going to do production manufacturing or whatever else they decide to do. I think they're going to do it in phases like that. It makes sense. It makes sense because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if they should do that in reverse and talk about growing production and manufacturing, because what you have to get, once again, it's the chicken and the egg. You can be licensed, FDA licensed to sell because you have to make a choice, right, between FDA and state. But if you go FDA, then you have to wait to see how they figure out production or management to go ahead and let that grow and be able to go on. So you're just waiting on them to figure out how they're
And wasting
going to
money.
get you
Yeah.
the weed right there. So you're just waiting. Basically, you have the license and you're waiting for them to tell you how you're going to get your stuff.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's a good point. They should have started with the production because you can't sell what's not grown. And I've said that many times.
Hey, here's a big surprise, people. It's a plant, little seed, water. I have no idea how to grow anything, but I do know that it takes a little bit of time for a plant to grow.
At least 4 to 6 months indoors, is what
Wow,
it takes
that long?
from seed to harvest. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
4 to 6 months. You can go anywhere from 8 to 9, depending on the grower or whatever. But on
And
average,
see, and that's the season because you still have to grow.
Yeah.
You have to harvest. You have to process that. We're talking almost a year out. Well, I wouldn't say exactly a year, but say anywhere from say 4 to 10 months.
Yeah. And on top of that, you have to remember, this is just to apply. This isn't getting approved. You still have to go through the whole FDA process of getting approved by the DEA, the FDA, and all these other 3-letter agencies that are probably going to be involved with this. So you're going to have to do your due diligence anyway and do all this. It would have been smarter if they started with production, then went manufacturing, and then retail being the very last one.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why they went with retail first is because they feel that the retails probably need the relief from the 280E, but that or clause already makes them exempt from 280E because state illegal medical marijuana is Schedule 3 legal now.
Yeah.
And so as they said, starting today, this will be legal. And that was last week.
So, I mean, like we said, we talked, what does that mean for a lot of people? This going the whole schedule thing and what this goes, does that mean that a lot of our dispensaries, which are medically approved,
Yeah.
right, that say the month of May, they can start not having to worry about 280A on medical?
I think that's now.
Or is it now?
I think it's right now. From my understanding,
if they
from the
file for the end of
documentation,
April, then
I don't even think they have to. So you don't have to file to be approved for that. You only have to file if you want to sell FDA approved stuff and export.
Some people will pay their taxes monthly, some will pay quarterly, some will go with the fiscal year because the fiscal year ends in June.
Yes.
July 1st is the beginning of the fiscal year. So I'm saying that there are a lot of people that, I mean, is it going to be retroactive for the amount of time that they have to pay taxes, or is it like from this date you can start not counting that towards 280E?
I think it's the date of when this started.
So that would be the 28th.
Yeah. So I think yesterday was the 28th, right? Yeah. So I think yesterday or, whenever, this became official is when you can do it. And I think in the last time they were talking, they said a couple years back, you can even go back and get some returns on it too, because this started almost 4 years ago.
And since New Mexico is really good about keeping their records.
And we officially made medical cannabis in New Mexico a medicine because our Supreme Court upheld that many times.
Yeah.
That it is a medication officially here in New Mexico. So yeah, I mean we're as good as golden. I mean, Lori Sanchez joined us last week. If you guys watched that episode, if not, go ahead and check it out. She explained some really good stuff, and she knows, of course, scheduling stuff. She prescribes it as well as she recommends cannabis to people when they get their card. So hit her up if you guys need your medical cannabis card here soon. But she explained it very well to us, and that the framework of all of this is gonna be totally different. It's not gonna be.
It's gonna be like I said. There's good and bad. There's a lot of really good things that are happening right now. I'm still waiting for the government to fuck it all up, but that'll come when it comes.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like
interesting.
It's almost like there's two industries within the medical marijuana industry itself. And that's kind of weird. And they even mentioned the unlicensed, unlicensed people, and that blows my mind. So, like, what do you mean unlicensed people? Like in our state, you're either licensed or you're not licensed. Like,
could they be speaking of as the so-called
traditional
market?
Yeah. So the traditional market is still remaining Schedule 1. So that's one thing that you guys need to remember. Remember, I told you it's split off. Schedule 1 activity is still, if you don't have a license, if you don't have a dispensary license, or you're not doing medical activity within the state, whatever, Schedule 1. And I told you guys that was more than likely going to be the case. There would still be Schedule 1 activity, and the government was very clear about that since the beginning of this process. Saying that there will be Schedule 1 activity, which told me that they were going to split this off to a medical cannabis or medical marijuana and a cannabis marijuana one, and they did.
Yeah.
They did exactly what I thought they were going to do. And to be honest, a lot of people didn't realize that, and it's kind of weird because I kept telling everybody, and people kept talking to me like I was a fucking idiot. And I kept telling them, I was like, guys, I don't know what to tell you. The government said it this way. I know the government pretty well. It worked for them. And like if they said it this way, that's what it means. Like they're not going to like deviate far from that. And
if the gentleman says something, please believe him. He had to fill out government forms, and I know how those go.
Yeah. There's a joke that we all had to show our booty hole to join the military, and it's very true. You
Actually,
had to show,
you do MEPS.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, at MEPS, you have to actually show your butthole to a doctor. So there's that. Have a good image of that today.
Yeah, I've heard lots of stories about that. But it's also, it's all in the words and how you present it and how that out. That's when we said right at the top of the show that the words mean a lot, and especially in legal and politics. So how they word it is going to make a difference. So you have to pay attention to those. So.
Yeah, and one thing I need to add in here too is the DEA or the FDA approval for the medical stuff. It's tied to your license automatically. So the moment something happens at that license, that goes away or restarts too. And so that way it stops a lot of the BS paperwork, because you already go through a lot of paperwork through the state anyway.
Yeah.
Especially here in New Mexico, it's very well documented, and the federal government understands that the states have done a pretty good job of making sure that they're following all these guidelines. They set up some too as well with the Cole memo back in the day, and so the states kind of went off of that. And so they're kind of copying the same thing when it comes to the scheduling stuff, because they know that we've had over. To be honest, the document mentions California in 96, but we've had a lot more experience because we did it in like 78, I think.
78?
Yeah, I think it was 78. We did it here in New Mexico. We were actually the first medical cannabis state. However, California was the first one to do dispensaries, open it up and actually have an actual network.
Yes, and they did such a good job.
I know. Well, they did a good job with medical. They fucked up when it came to rec.
Yeah.
Once it came to rec, they just said, oh, we're going to do everything totally different. No, we're not going to do it that way. And so it shows, because they're kind of hurting,
Yeah, they are.
They could be doing better. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of good cannabis that comes from California, but they could be doing better. When it comes to the cannabis side, they were too restrictive on a lot of parts of it.
One of the other things, I know I keep sidetracking you on all this other stuff, but I have questions. I have things in my head. What does this mean? Like, say, because one of the things we've always talked about is testing and the standardization of testing. If the government is getting involved as a standard, is there going to be standards for what they consider medical cannabis as far as testing and all of the different?
I think so long as it follows the FDA protocols for your FDA stuff, I think it's fine. It's going to be tested and all that. And I believe from the documentation I'm reading that your state tests will be fine too, and they'll be Schedule 3 because it's tested. Now, there was a question that someone had brought up, and I thought it was a very good question. Testing facilities, are they going to be Schedule 3 as well too, or are they kind of in this weird limbo? That's a question that hasn't been answered at all. And I can't tell anybody, again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not the government, so I can't tell you exactly what they're going to do on that portion, because that is a good question. And I've thought about it, and I don't know. They're going to have to do something, though. Because the fuckery on that area is going to be wild.
The thing that came into my mind, and once again, I know I'm sidetracking you, and there's a whole other rabbit hole that we go out. Because first off, I keep thinking that strange facility up over in the Grants area, screwed up by not doing anything, because they would have been kind of set right now with everything that they went through. And that building, that facility is not being used for anything still, right? Yeah. But also, if the producers have to sell their product to the government, and I know this is a silly thing, but it popped into my head. Does the government get to name all of the different not strains, but the different
products, I guess,
that they have right here?
It's usually named by the companies that bring it up, and I think the government probably has little say in it. But for the most part, they come up with their names themselves.
Yeah.
And
because I'm just saying, a Trump branded cannabis would be freaking hilarious.
I mean, yeah, we're going to run into it, but I see, because we already have
Trump cannabis. It's really good. It's the best in the world.
Easy marketing on that one, right? You don't even have to think.
He'll do the commercial for you.
Yeah, he does the commercial for you. I kind of feel that one, they're probably going to go along the same lines that Marinol has gone with, the more medicated names. Like, they're probably going to, the FDA approved ones. The state legal stuff, we're kind of left to do whatever the fuck we want, so long as we're following the guidelines that the state set forth for us, and so long as the state is, ensuring that they're enforcing those and following those certain guidelines that they have set up. This is very unique. I haven't seen the federal government do this before when it comes to something like this. So that's why it's so new and confusing, because usually it's black and white. But this, it has that or clause. And so now we have the FDA stuff, which we know takes a long time, very expensive. You have to get the one product approved. It's not I get my facility approved and I can sell whatever I want.
And that's the question I had about study and all of the different THC quantities and everything else like that, all the genetics that goes behind everything, because from grow to grow, it's different.
Yeah.
From grow to grow, I mean, we're talking just in the same producer.
Yeah.
So from each one, it's different, and how they do that, how that would end up in the standardization. Maybe Dwayne can help us out because I know that he was working on the pill thing and all that. It's like, is there got to be a certain amount of certain standards for that? And government cannabis, like government cheese, is it going to be stored in a cave somewhere? I don't know, but it's just like those are questions that I have in my mind because we all know how government really does things quite well on that. But I had my questions because just hanging out in the 3.5 years that we've been doing this together, it's like there are so many different genetics out there. It just blows my mind. We literally, you could ask my fire team. We played racehorse or weed one night while we were playing games, and it's like, is the name a racehorse or is the name a cannabis product that you can go get down at the dispensary?
Yeah.
Because it's just like that, and that's just wondering with all the genetics and different things, are they going to go along the same lines of trying to get these genetics stabilized and make it more consistent, or as you grow and the growers that you have, it's like that creativity and getting all of these genetics in there and trying the different things.
I think you can start with, with a one kind of cultivar thing that you want to do, but eventually in the end,
cultivar. That's the name
the cultivar. Yeah, cultivar. You guys know the strain. It's more accurate to use cultivar. So we
use big words here.
You could use that one and kind of base it off of it and start doing your studies and tests, but it's going to have to be consistent because they are going to, do many tests and make sure that this is a consistent product for the patient, because you can't have inconsistencies with an FDA approved product.
Exactly.
So that's going to be the tricky part. So what I'm thinking is, for the most part, I think most people are going to opt out of getting the FDA license because all this does is make more of a pain in the ass. I mean, here on the other page, here's what it says: a pharmaceutical product containing cannabis that the FDA has formally approved through their drug approval process, Marinol, Syndros, whatever. You have to register it with the DEA as a Schedule III manufacturer, distributor, full pharmacy compliance. So you have to have a pharmacy. You can't have your dispensary anymore. You have to have pharmacists now.
You actually have to have a licensed pharmacist.
Yeah, you have to have actually a licensed pharmacist
to distribute that.
To distribute this is an FDA approved product. That is sold in an FDA way. The only thing that they did was gave us that OR clause to allow us this hippie FDA approved side of it that is not done in any of this other way. So yeah.
I'm saying all our pharmacy students out there, job opportunities.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. So you have to have a licensed pharmacist. It has to be.
If you get the FDA license.
If you get the FDA license.
Yeah. If you have the state medical approved one, you are already automatically, it just ties to it just magnetizes to your fucking license.
So here in New Mexico, is there any benefit for going FDA?
To be honest, and this is
other than being able to sell outside.
Yeah, this is my opinion too. If I was the person put in the situation, I'm starting on a blank slate. If I wanted to go the federal legal route, I would just go the FDA approved route and not even fuck with the state licensing, because that just adds more of a headache. I do either or is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't try to do both, because from what I'm seeing now, what I've explained to you all, it's going to be separate, and you're going to have to separate the both. Now, we've been told, but I've been heard from other lawyers and stuff like that, if you do have the medical legal one, you're selling to rec patients and medical patients the normal way, to have two different registers so it's separated. That's a good idea. If you have a system that already separates it automatically, you maybe not have to worry about that. But it may be a good idea to have two separate registers, one for medical patients and one for the rec patients. They were actually doing that at the very beginning of rec sales, because we were transitioning from a medical only state to a rec state, which incorporated both. And so I remember this. I asked people, I said, no, I even said this. I said, why aren't medical cannabis patients seeing first? What's going on? And boom, night and day it changed. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to start seeing them first. And then they started, having a separate line for the patients even. And so if you went to the rec dispensary, they would say, this is the medical line, this is the rec line. And, it was a little faster to go to the medical line. But it was worth it, and that's the way that they are suggesting maybe you should do it.
Which
But
makes sense. Once again, if
it
you're keeping
does.
your records in one register or one point of sale system, right? Not the whole system, but in one point of sale register, uh, then you're going to make things a lot easier for you when it comes to claiming those taxes,
Yeah.
claiming all that other stuff. But you'll have your medical sales, and with the way that everything is, the records are kept in New Mexico, then all the medical sales are already being kept separate from everything else
Yeah.
too. So every dispensary knows what they've sold in
Yeah.
medical. So that helps out a great big deal. So that's pretty, honestly, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing, like I said, if you are currently a dispensary, currently that way, it's going to be easier. Nobody loves the hoops. Nobody loves going through all the government approval stuff to go ahead and get FDA approved. But if you're somebody that's still considering just starting out right now, would it, once again, that's that production and stuff that can go in egg, chicken and the egg, right thing. It would be
Yeah.
a good idea to try and go through that FDA approval thing before, and then if you get that approval, then you're set when they do get things ready that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a decision you have to make as a business owner.
Once
You know,
again.
do I want to go through the burden of becoming FDA approved? And you have to figure out what you're going to do too. You know,
Yeah,
do I
sure.
want to be a distributor? Do I want to be a manufacturer? Do I want to be a producer? Now, keep in mind they keep producer and manufacturer in the same one. I don't know why. But you know, do I want to do, what do I want to do? You know, and depending on what you pick is going to depend on what you have to do. You know, if you want to create these products, you're going to have to go through this whole thing to do it. Now, if you want to produce, what I'm finding out is you can produce, and then the government buys it from you at a nominal fee, which means they kind of figure it out.
Ask our current growers how much they're getting. I'm just saying.
Right, exactly. So the government buys it from you from a nominal fee. Usually it's probably going to be cheap as shit. And then they sell it back to you. So let's say if you have both, you have the production and you have the whatever, you know, you're
At a more
creating
than nominal fee, I'm sure.
Exactly. And then you sell it back to you and you get to sell it to people. So if you have the pharmacy and you have a production, you're going to be growing for the federal government to take your weed at a different facility, of course. And then at your pharmacy, when you buy the product, you're going to buy it from the government again twice. So it's better to, what I'm thinking now and what I'm seeing from this being all laid out, it's probably better to just have one of these if you're going to be operating in that sense. Unless you got buco bucks, don't get me wrong. Yeah, if you got money, good, don't get me wrong, you do whatever you want. But you know, if you're just starting out, you kind of figure out, okay, I got enough money to get an FDA license. You know, I got just enough. And to be honest, it's probably in the millions to do FDA stuff to approve a product. Approve a product.
Well, from what Dwayne was saying last time we talked to him, oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
It's millions. Yeah, it's within the millions of dollars. And Dwayne, yeah, he's probably spent over a few $1 million and this is for just his product. You know, like he's trying to get a product put out, and that is a little more extensive than just growing it, so that way they can then process it into the product.
But the product that he was talking about is exactly probably, I think, what they would prefer.
Yeah.
With the pharmaceutical cannabis.
So. Yeah, and you know they probably have their own genetics that they run with it too. And I think he mentioned that they.
Yeah, I think he mentioned something. I'd have to go back and watch our show.
Yeah, and I'll ask him again here in a couple of weeks when we have him on the show.
Yeah.
So
well, I'll just wait. Yeah, I'll just wait.
We'll just wait. We'll clarify again. We'll get the rundown again, and everybody will learn it again all together. But it's confusing. It's a lot of people say it's a step in the right direction. But people are going to sign up for the DEA thing when they don't need to.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it is very confusing. You know, it sounds like you have to sign up with the FDA, the DEA and then the FDA and everything if you want to continue, but you don't have to.
No.
It's only if you want to. You know, do you do that? And so
and like you said, for people in other states that have dispensaries, it's the same thing. It's either or, right?
Yeah.
So if you are currently own a dispensary and you have your medical patients, you have your recreational patients, basically you are good right now as far as the medical stuff, and you don't have to worry much about it because it's written in there.
Yeah.
So
now, don't get me wrong, there's a little nuances of, are we good through different states? Are we good through the inland border checks? Can we go through TSA?
Yeah,
those questions haven't been answered yet.
Yeah.
And I would not test that yet, guys.
Yeah. Do not test the TSA. They're really pissed now. They're not getting paid.
Yeah. And the border patrol's there with them, or the ICE is there with them and everything. Yeah, that's true. They've always been kind of close here anyway.
Yeah.
Other states maybe not.
But I mean, but if we, like you said, if it's Schedule 3, I mean, nobody stops you from taking any of the pharmaceuticals type stuffs with the Border Patrol. So if you've got your paperwork and say, yeah, this is all medical.
And maybe you might be good. And to be honest, it depends on who you're going to encounter. You know, you could encounter someone that says, There's really not much I can do.
I mean, I guess.
Am I going to pursue this and they tell me to fuck off later and we waste everybody's time and money? Like you could have someone that has some sense.
And I guess that would have something to do with their current AG right now.
Yeah.
To go ahead and set those rules for border patrol, border checks. I mean, technically, we're in a unique area and we're in a unique type of a situation with the border checks that we have all around us like that. But still, it would be nice to get a little bit of attention on that, so that people, once again, if we're cool around the state as medical stuff, people up in Albuquerque would really try some, southern New Mexico.
Yeah,
Down in the county stuff,
Yeah, and then I made a meme last week too. After all this came out, it had Forrest Gump sitting there, looking, and it said, just like that, all the cannabis going through the inland border checks became medical marijuana.
and just like that.
And just like that.
And just like that, because it'd be interesting, when I go out for my son's birthday, to give him a present.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Take a few drinks up there.
Now, one thing I do want to mention is in this, they mentioned a few times that what's exempt from this is the stalks and seeds of the cannabis plant. That is still Schedule 1.
Okay, so
I don't know.
So if you have a small stalk, or the seeds, hide them or plant them.
Yeah. And what's weird is, even the new hemp bill, they're trying to outlaw seeds too. So what it will leave it to is clones and tissue culture and, like things like that. I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, where do you think the clones came from? Right. Yeah.
Well, I know that Tennessee is very big into hemp, and I know that Rand Paul is trying to get some more hearings done, because they're going to have those hearings, I believe, in November as well, for all the hemp stuff. To go ahead and try and get that scheduled. So if I don't know, I mean, what are the odds that somebody actually figures out what the hell is going on and say, like, you know what, let's just do this.
Yeah,
it's all one plant. Let's just go ahead and do some more research on the medical benefits. Let's go ahead and grow that. If you have the hemp, which would be a certain amount or whatever, the way that they had it defined before, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a government overreaction on everything that happens right here. This is where my liberal side starts showing up, Chad. So, because it was an overreaction to people saying that all these kids can go ahead and get their hands on all these drinks and all these other different things with the CBD. You know the letters.
Yeah.
I can't remember them all. There's so many. But there was an overreaction to go ahead and say that people can order this off the internet. People can go ahead and the kids can go into a convenience store and get these drinks. Well, then you know what? Ask for a freaking ID.
Yeah.
Because kids can't go in there and buy a beer.
Yeah.
So if you put those along in that same section and not have those nifty labels like you were talking about.
Exactly.
Those ones before. I've seen those labels at always good for a good lemonade.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. But, then what they're, and I think you even said this when the governor of Texas said, wait a minute. Let's take a look at that. And that is enforcement on these things. You want some rules in there to go ahead and keep the kids out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've talked to anybody that says, let the kids go wild. Nobody's ever said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. No one's sitting here saying, let the kids get fucked up.
Before anybody says anything, my son's 35, so it's way past that. He's older than Chad. Well, he's about as old.
Yeah, well, I'm close. I'm 39. Yeah.
Okay.
Few years difference, 4 years.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad. Old enough to be your daddy.
Right. And one thing I forgot to clarify this earlier. So there's the part where I said you don't have to sign up for the FDA DA license. However, and I saw it in my notes, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know how I forgot this. You do have to sign up with the DEA within 60 days if you're a retail, so that way they know, that you're
it's a register.
Yeah, you have to register, and you have 60 days, and then you will get those protections automatically. It's like a magnet. Boop. So sorry if I didn't explain that correctly before.
So you have to apply if you want to get the FDA license, get FDA approval, but just to let everybody know, say, I'm a dispensary. This is what I'm doing. I'm covered by the state with my medical.
Yeah, you have to do that within the 60-day window so you can get those protections. So that you do have to do. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain that earlier. We were going through a lot, but yes, you don't have to sign up for the FDA license. but you have to sign up with the DEA or the FDA DEA license. That's why it's so confusing, the freaking 3 letters. But you do have to sign up with the DEA within 60 days, so that way they know who you are and what you're doing, and that way you can get the tax deduction and this and that. And even with taxes, though, they're still not sure. Even in the document, it says that you should probably seek guidance from a tax professional when it comes
You
to
want
this.
tax professionals?
Yeah, and I'm just like, you guys are the tax professional. What the fuck? You're the ones who create the taxes.
I'm going to ask the IRS on how they can take more of my money.
Yeah, exactly. So
Because they're not taking enough of it now.
yeah, so that's
Thank you, state of New Mexico.
and that's a good example of them still figuring it out and not really know what the hell's going on and how to go about this.
Because that leads into the whole other side when you talk about taxes or anything else. Are we talking about, is it now, are you okay with getting a bank accounts?
Yeah.
Through there. Are you
That's a good
okay
point.
with being able to do business as a dispensary because it's a Schedule 3, so therefore it's technically a medical marijuana. Are you able to get a bank account so you can pay your bills and keep track of your money and all that stuff?
From what I'm seeing, yeah, but are they going to? Because the way that the 60-day window for the current dispensaries, and if they want to continue to work the way they do and get the protections, you're still half illegal. Only half of your business is selling to legal medical marijuana patients, and they're federally protected. The rest is still Schedule 1. And so I don't know how the banks are really going to go about that. The government may just say, go ahead and allow them, if they're doing this and the split, whatever, who knows, because there's some surprising shit that came from this that I didn't think they were going to do.
Yeah.
Like just saying, having that or clause, you can do FDA approved or state legal medical marijuana, that blew my mind that they even did that in the first place. So I don't really know how that's going to work with the banks.
Because if they didn't put that or in there, then I think we said before 42 states. I think last time I checked it was 42.
Yeah.
42 states have a medical marijuana program, and that would jack everybody up if they're just saying, by the way, we're taking over now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
who knows?
Basically what it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different questions, there's a lot of nuances, and there's a lot we still have to wait to go ahead and figure out. Meetings in June, meetings in November, the whole hemp thing. Are they I mean, to be honest, just to get this far with Schedule 3, is that, and we talk about the little steps where each step you're getting closer and closer, because if cannabis itself goes Schedule 1, say in November, or even say at the start of 2027, if they want to go that way, or the fiscal year of 2027 in June, then in the same way, if it's Schedule 1, then all that 280E stuff, still has to get figured out for the recreational part inside.
Yeah.
But that would mean a lot for, once again, travel patients. Individual grows, we didn't even get into the part
interstate commerce, international commerce. Yeah, it kind of goes unlimited once we do that, and this is the precursor to something like that. It's usually what it is whenever we do something like this.
I can kind of see them trying to do this with medical first.
Yeah.
Figure out a lot of that junk that goes along with interstate commerce and everything else. So if it eventually does go, everything goes Schedule 1, then
or
deschedule.
Yeah, so Schedule 1 cannabis will eventually become descheduled. Yeah, Schedule. There you go, Schedule 3. So yeah, that's why I was like, wait, I'm confused. So
now,
yeah,
I even have it up here pulled up somewhere that what the different schedules are, and I'm a newbie. Back off.
Yeah, it happens, man.
But going Schedule 3. So if all that goes in, I know that everybody wants to just be descheduled. It doesn't necessarily mean that the fuckery will end, because it blows your mind that alcohol and tobacco aren't even scheduled at all.
Yeah. And that blows my mind too, because they're making this huge deal about cannabis, but alcohol is deadly as shit. It kills people all the time. While we've had this conversation, someone has died from alcohol in some way. That's how that stat goes. And tobacco, it kills people all the time too.
Cancers, all the stuff that go along with that, lung problems, breathing problems, the whole thing.
You shouldn't smoke anything, to be honest. That's why the FDA approved stuff, you're not allowed to have smokable products. It's not medical. I don't think anything they have on the FDA approved is smokable. I'm pretty sure they don't have anything that you could smoke that is on that list. So everything is medicine. So
But brownies are on the list.
exactly.
So yeah, but so I think they've got to work all that out. But working all that out with medical means that if when they do go ahead and deschedule, or if they move everything to a Schedule 3, that makes it easier for everything else. But
Mhm.
like you said, if everything goes Schedule 3, then it's still just all the medical stuff that is there. It has to be pretty much descheduled for recreational for a lot of people not to have a lot of these problems.
Yeah, so we're still going to run into a lot of issues. Like I said, this was only like an acknowledgement that it's a legit thing now. It's not something that's set in stone. You can't just go to the dispensary and take your weed to Texas and think you're going to be okay. When you don't have a medical cannabis card, that's Schedule 1 activity.
Yeah.
Um,
But Texas does have a medical cannabis program and they
yes,
have reciprocity.
yes,
So,
but I also think that if you have medical in the future when they clarify this, it should be once they clarify it. If you have a medical cannabis card and you have medical cannabis from the state, it's all labeled, all that good shit, all the information's on there. And we'll get into the patient grow stuff, at the very right after this because this is the last thing I got to talk about.
okay, yeah.
Because yeah, we're already an hour into the episode.
I didn't feel like an hour.
Yeah, it didn't, dude.
You.
I realized how fast this went by.
It's amazing how quickly it goes by when I get to talk and not fall asleep behind the computer. I mean,
exactly. So, oh, crap, I forgot where I was on that one.
we're going to talk the last part of the thing before we talk about that.
I was going to talk about
different states.
Yeah, different states. So yeah, if you go to like Texas that way, you're not going to be protected. Now, what I think is eventually going to happen is that's going to be the case if you have state legal medical cannabis, not the FDA licensed one, the Marinol or whatever. If you have state legal, you have your medical cannabis card, you got it from a medical cannabis dispensary, whatever. And we'll talk about the growth thing in a second. That should be okay for other states and stuff too, because it's a legal prescription. Even if the state has a ban on it, the federal government sees this whole thing as legal, and so they should oblige it and say, okay, this is a prescription. It happens many times.
Yeah.
Usually, no matter where you go in the nation, if you have a prescription for it, you're usually okay, and they leave you alone. And that's because of that.
Well, when I travel and I have all my prescriptions that I'm taking, I put them in a clear bag. They're all labeled. Everything is like that, and then I just have that open up in my bag saying these are my prescriptions.
Yeah.
They're medically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to get because I have to take them with me. For
And cannabis is a unique medication in the sense that it's not like every other medication that we're used to seeing. It's either in a liquid form, a pill form, a shot, or a patch. It's never in the form that we see cannabis commonly. Don't get me wrong, cannabis can come in pretty much all of those, but the most common one we see is flower. And so what I want to talk about now is the home grow, though.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
About what does this mean for the home grower?
So I looked this up myself, and there's actually a bunch of lawyers that are conflicted on this themselves. High Times had put out an article, and they spoke to a bunch of lawyers, and some say that you should be okay, and some say you maybe not. And what I think what it might be somewhere in between is going to depend on your state and how your state went about it. And I think there's going to have to be some clarification later on about that. So for right now, I would just give it a safe, I don't know. But for the future, I think it'll be okay for the fact that, so New Mexico, we used to actually have a personal production license. We had two separate licenses. You had your medical cannabis card, then you applied for the license. And it gave you allotment of how much you could grow, and that you were a licensed producer. When we went to medical, they combined it into the card already. So every cannabis card holder gets the protection of the grow on top of everybody else gets the right to grow, but it's the same plant count number. It just makes it easier, so you're not like patients get this amount of plants and then rec gets this amount of plants. And when it comes to regulation, like how are you really going to enforce that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the plant count is really hard to enforce anyway to start with, when it comes to like just regular grows and everything. And to be honest, most people that grow, they don't grow a lot. They don't grow a shit ton. You have the very rare guy, of course, who's the minority who can grow a fuck ton or whatever, this and that. That guy's the rare guy. Most people that I know that have tried to grow, they try it once and then they give up. Or they try it once, they like it, and they get better as time goes. But, they're not having these $1 million facility kind of situation. They just want to grow enough for themselves. And I know that's what I do. I just want enough for myself. And I've been self-sufficient since I've been in this. And so I want to know this answer too, because it's a huge question. And what I think is going to happen is eventually they're going to say, if your state follows these guidelines, blah, 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 when it comes to home grow, then it'll be federally protected because it is a part of your state medical program. And that's what we did. So luckily for us, we strengthened our medical cannabis program before we went adult use in lieu of something like this happening in the future. And so we're already set up here in New Mexico to be good. We just need more clarification from the federal government, and we need them to kind of figure out the finalization of the rules before we really say things for sure.
Yeah. Well, one thing that makes me look is that how you, as an advocate, and everybody went about setting up the whole program, or getting the program to where it is now.
Yeah.
It just makes me think, hey, federal government, take a look at what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Use it as an example, because the fact that you have your producer and your medical card and it's into one, that means that you are, even if you are allowed a certain amount of plants, and they say, hey, you can grow, but just up to this much for personal use.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because here it's 12. You get 12 plant. Well, it's 6 is 6, and there's I know nuances.
Plants,
blah blah blah. Yeah.
Oh, that is the weeds. Literally getting into the weeds on how all that goes.
Yeah.
There. So, but still, because if you're growing for personal use or just growing for the personal stuff, and then maybe you're really good at it and you want to go, like, maybe I can become a producer or something.
And you get a
like
micro
that.
license.
Then you can get a micro license.
Yeah, get 200 plants. Yeah.
And once again, I'm a newbie. I have no how much 200 plants produces. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea how much one plant produces.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that the more plants you have, the better for as far as what you have, because it's like orchards. The more apple trees, the more pecan trees you have, the more pecans you're going to get.
Exactly.
If you have a pecan tree in your backyard, sure, it's nice to go out there and grab some pecans every once in a while.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I have 3, and so it is nice to have that.
Do you hug your trees and shake them?
No, the wind does it for me.
So when you see all the pecans going, like, oh, time to set out some baskets or something.
Yeah, or I have that little rolly thing. That you just
nice.
pick. So yeah, it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, okay.
And it's fast too.
Okay, that doesn't work. You don't have a rolly thing for your other plants, do you?
No, that would fuck it up.
That's not the rolly thing I was thinking of. I thought you had somebody that did.
Oh, those I roll by hand. I don't need a machine to roll. I actually roll. But that's all I have this week, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this week in #Grassy Logic. It was a long episode, but we had so much to go by. Sorry, I had that little confusion at the end. Hope you guys stick around enough to hear that part. But to clarify again, we'll get some clarification on the production and the manufacturing, how they're going to distinct, medical between rec and medical, because here in New Mexico, there's no difference. There's only difference is really at the end of the transaction when either a rec patient or a medical patient purchases it. That's the only distinction that we have. And don't get me wrong, you have the medical cannabis patient edible numbers that are allowed to be higher. So maybe on the manufacturing side, if you produce the medical ones, you exempt from this or whatever, but we'll see. There'll be more answers that we get. As for the retail guys, remember, you don't have to get the FDA license, but you do need to register with the DEA, so that way they know who you are and you get that magnetized protection on your license that comes and goes with the license and what it does. So keep that in mind. I do believe I have the link of that on my socials, so if you guys are curious, just go ahead and click that. Sorry this is such a long episode, but good Lord, there was so much information that we had.
And this was just one topic.
And this is just one topic. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't even get to cover. I'm sure there's stuff that's going to be clarified as time goes on. And who knows, I could have, overstepped or overlooked a couple of things too, which I almost did. Okay. Keep that in mind. There's going to be corrections coming in the future to a lot of this other shit because, as I said, the government doesn't even know how the fuck to go about this.
Yeah, that's right. And, just to give Tom a shout out, cannabis legalization.
Yeah. Tom and Miggy, shout out to them. Do some great work.
He's been a really good resource for me to go ahead and try and figure out how that. And he's a lawyer.
Yeah, he's a legit lawyer.
He's a legit lawyer. Not in our area, but he's still a legit lawyer. He's going to understand and explain that stuff a whole lot better than we can. Yeah. But I don't know. Interesting times, sir.
Yeah, it is. And so we'll be back next week. If I hear anything in between now and then, I'll let y'all know. So like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know, and I'll see y'all next week. All right, shoots.